Go get them hired. Can you guys all hear me okay? Great. I was going to say if you stole my last piece of pizza, I'd kill you, but I got it. He talked just long enough that I could get it out down my throat. I've got some handouts here, so if you decide you want to fall asleep instead of listen to me, you can figure everything out from the handout. Okay? It's actually a little article on negotiation. So, yeah, I'm a medical doctor, which means normally this would not be a topic that I'm interested in. But I met a guy named Professor Stephen Blum in 2002, who was a Wharton professor, in a class, and he's a negotiation expert, and we had a session, and there were about 200. I was the dean of admissions at the time at the medical school, and deans and chair people and people like that, and they had this contest about like negotiating a book deal with a book dealer, and then you had a certain set of rules, and I won. So I got a prize from Professor Blum, and he said, well, you won, but you lost. And I said, what are you talking about? I won. I crushed it. I got this book for $2,200. It was cheap. He goes, yeah, but the guy's never going to deal with you again, and that's one of the lessons we'll talk about again. You beat him up so bad that your goodwill is gone. Outside of, I've had 3 children go to Brown, a daughter and 2 boys, and I have 2 others who went to some school up north that we won't talk about. I've really enjoyed the Brown students that I've met over the years. I do a lot outside of medicine. I've bought and sold a couple medical products companies. I have about 25 patents, and right now I have a company on medical products in Ireland, in Dublin, Galway, and then one that's locally here in Seekonk, Massachusetts, called Illuminos. And Illuminos has hired a bunch of Brown undergrads for summer projects. It's got about $60 million in funding, and we're doing a very novel way to fix bones. Beside that stuff, I own a venture investment fund in New York with another person from Christie's auction house. And that's really where I learned how to negotiate. If you want to learn how to negotiate, try to buy something from somebody who doesn't want to sell it to you except at their price. And that goes for used cars, that goes for buying a used bicycle, that goes for anything else in life. And so the principles of what we'll talk about today are really applicable to everything. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, eventually, and you're going to try to do a startup or get involved in a very early stage thing, you're going to come across a time in your career where you're going to have to negotiate something. Hopefully your salary at a high level, but something else, whether it's a contract for whatever you're doing, and you're going to want to try to get the best deal in the context of a good overall deal for both parties. So we're going to talk about all the principles that go along with that. So to start off, just for fun, this is how you don't want to negotiate.
Hello?
Honey? Are you at the club?
Yes.
I'm at the mall now, and I found this beautiful leather coat. It's only $1,000. Can I get it?
Well, sure, if you like it that much.
Okay. I also stopped by the Mercedes dealership and saw the new model. The one I really like.
How much?
120.
Well, at that price, I want it with all the options.
Great. Oh, and one more thing. The house we wanted last year is back on the market. They're asking 1.5.
We'll make them an offer. But come in at 1.4.
Okay. I love you, baby.
I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Does anybody know whose phone this is?
So that's how you don't, well, if you're the wife, I guess that's a good negotiation strategy. So this is a little article that I'm passing around. It basically summarizes everything up. It was written for a bunch of hand surgeon people, so, but it kind of goes through all the points. So a couple things you just got to think about as you approach whatever your first process is when you're dealing with another person or a set of people, and you're trying to accomplish a task and they're trying to accomplish the opposite to some degree. Not always. The best deals are always when either both people are a little happy or both people are a little unhappy, right? If one party is happy and the other party is unhappy, it's probably not going to be a good long-term situation. If I were buying a painting and I never was going to see the dealer again, and I knew that, and I only wanted one painting for one spot in my house, and I wasn't a collector, well, then I'm going to go for the throat, and I'm going to get the best deal I can and just say, see you later, I don't care if I ever see you again. But if I'm an art collector and I have a bunch of space on my house and I want to buy a bunch of paintings and I'm going to have an ongoing relationship potentially with this dealer, you don't want to hammer the dealer to the last penny. Because otherwise the next time you come and he has something you really want, you're going to pay more, right? So you got to kind of give and take a little bit. So either they're a little disappointed or a little happy. The other thing you got to remember about negotiation, the outcomes are rarely random. People have a perception sometimes that the outcome of a negotiation is really just, kind of luck or this. It's a lot about preparation and data mining before you get to that point. And we'll go through that a little bit later. And the last thing is you can always teach yourself. If you're a lousy negotiator now, by practice, you guys can teach yourself how to be a very good negotiator. It's not something that's innate, so you can learn. I stunk at it in the beginning, and I'm pretty good at it now. I'll give you a couple examples. So the process, so preparation and data gathering, you always want to structure your argument around facts and figures. The more you can do that, the less they can argue against you. If it's, well, I don't like it, or I think it might be, that doesn't really hold a lot of water in a negotiation. But if you say, well, I know you paid $10,600,035 for this painting at Christie's last month, that helps in a negotiation, right? Because the other side knows exactly where you're sitting, where your knowledge base is on that option. Trading information. So you want to make your points when you negotiate, but you also want to be very careful to listen to the other side, because very frequently the other side will give you clues as to what their bargaining position is. So you want to make sure you're not only focused on your half. You want to make sure you're listening to try to see, are there any clues that the other person's giving me that will let me understand where their line in the sand is, okay? And then bargaining face to face. It's really hard to negotiate anything electronically, by phone, Skype even, body language, are they fidgeting with their hands, their knees going up and down like this, all those little things help you assess the comfort level that the person has. Do they look you in the eye? Are they avoiding your gaze? Things like that can really make a difference in your ability to assess whether or not you're getting close to a deal or not. So try to always do it face to face, and then the final agreement. So there's Steve Blum that did this chart, which has been copied a zillion times. It's kind of your style. And most people fall into one of these four categories, and it has to do with your degree of assertiveness. So we all know people who are very in your face, kind of assertive, and then there are also folks who are passive, right? So high, low, and then need for others' approval. Does it make you feel better when people say, oh, you're really nice, you're really great, you're doing a great job? Or don't you really care about that? And that's also high, low. So you've got the collaborator, problem solver. They're very, very assertive, but they also want to please the other side. So they tend to try to figure out ways to make things work. You've got the accommodator, wants to make the other person happy, but isn't assertive. That's not the best negotiating style, right? Because you tend to lose. The competitor, highly aggressive and doesn't care what the other side thinks. That's the person you don't want to deal with again, right? And then the conflict avoider, low degree of assertiveness and low need for others' approval. So they don't like conflict because they're not an aggressive nature, but they don't really care what the outcome is. And then if you're in the middle of this crosshair, you're a compromiser, and that's what most people are in the middle of the crosshair. So you can migrate within this chart by practicing. So if you have a less aggressive personality, you can kind of teach yourself to be a little bit more aggressive as time goes on, learn from your mistakes, and push yourself from one part of the pie, that chart, to another part. The other thing is, whenever you do a negotiation, whether it's before, during, or after, you want to be very careful to try not to boast or gloat or talk about previous successes or talk about what you're going to do or talk about your car or anything that gives the other side a sense of your financial capabilities, your need for whatever they're selling, right? All those little things put you in a different position than if they don't know it. And at the end, we'll go through an example, and I'll change the rules of the example as we go through the example to show you how it changes your negotiation. And it also irritates people, you know. Nobody likes a bragger, so just don't do it. And this is, I think, the best thing you can learn. You never know when you're going to need somebody. And we all had this when I was in 6th grade and somebody was picking on me or whatever, you know. I mean, you never know when that person might, you know. There was a guy in my high school who was just always picked on by folks, and he ended up going to Harvard Law School and, you know, owned half the world. So, I mean, you never know when somebody you're gonna be in a position where you might need them help. So be a good person and try to do a deal that does you justice, that solves your problem, but also leaves something on the table so the other side is not irritated and just annoyed with you. Because they won't want to, they'll either not deal with you, or the next time they'll try to get back at you, and they'll make it much more difficult. So relationship to the other party, very, very important. So this we talked about a little bit, the one-time deal versus the relationship building, okay? We kind of already discussed that. They're two very different things. And if you're here at Brown and you're a senior and you're going to go back to California, you already got a job, and you got to go buy a car here, it's a one-time deal. Get it as cheap as you can, at least as long as it runs. You know, you don't need an ongoing relationship. You know you're gone. That information is valuable. Don't tell the dealer that. Don't say, hey, guess what? I got a job in California. Because then he's going to know. He's going to know you're a one-time deal, and he's going to say, whoa, I don't want to give you, I'm going to make you work for this. You know, I'm here at Brown. I'm going to be here for another 4 years. This car is temporary, just for 6 months. I'd like to buy another one later on. Oh, okay. I'll give him a little better deal now, and I'll get him on the second round. You know, try to fudge a little bit. It also dictates how aggressive you can be, right? So if the person, if you like them, or they're your friend, or they're a friend of your friend, or anything that can come back to nip you in the butt, you don't want to be overly aggressive. You want to be polite, considerate. I mean, that's just a general rule of thumb for life in general, I think. And remember, you never quite know when you might need the other party again in the future. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard or seen in practice where people think they don't, and 2 years later they do. And usually the second time when you do, you need them more than the first time. So you really regret burning that bridge. So just always keep that in the back of your mind. So this is my oldest daughter. She's a radiology resident right now, and this is my oldest son. He's in business school. These two are the master negotiators, best negotiator on earth. I've had 5 children. I mean, they can, you know, they know that if my wife and I take them to a restaurant, they figured out that if they scream, they get anything they want, right? If they do it at home, they don't get anything they want. But if it's a restaurant, they go like, oh, restaurant, great. I want a piece of candy. Wah! You know, anything you got to do to shut them up, you know, you give it to them. So they're crafty, they're brutal, they don't care about your feelings at all. They're unforgiving, they don't stop screaming until they get what they want. They get better with time. They learn that place where all these people are walking around with little kerchiefs around their thing and say, would you like some wine? That's a good place to negotiate. And they know your buttons, right? They know your buttons. And they push it all the time. So sometimes you can learn a lot from kids. I do this innovation talk, and some of the best innovation ideas come when you listen to people who aren't an expert in your field. Some of the best innovations that have ever been made are ones that come from other fields. So if I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I want to get an idea, where do I go? I go to Home Depot, or I go to Plumber's Warehouse, or I go to my auto mechanic, because it's amazing how plumbers can get a little clog out of a long, skinny copper pipe. Well, you know, a vascular surgeon might be able to use that idea, that technology. Whatever the grasper they use could be modified for vascular surgery, and that's actually where the Fogarty catheter, Jerry Fogarty, who invented the catheter that opens all your clogged heart vessels, he got that idea from his plumber, and now he's worth about $5 billion. So not a bad deal. So sometimes when you talk to people who aren't knowledgeable, they don't have any boundaries. They don't say, oh, I was taught that never works in today's society. They don't have that constraint. So that's children. They have no constraints. They don't know what's crazy or stupid idea or anything. And that's people outside your field of expertise. you get great ideas. So you can learn something from kids sometimes. So plan and prepare, dad often wins the days. We talked about that. Set high expectations. So this is the other thing. And if wherever you shoot, that's generally where you're going to be satisfied. So if you go into a negotiation, you're preconceived as, I want to buy this painting for $50. As long as you get it for $50 or less, you're kind of happy. But you don't know if you could have gotten it for $25. You just, because you've met your preconceived target, right? So always make a target and then go a little bit more than that. It gives you room to haggle, and it gives you something to strive for in your negotiation. And then, so higher than you think you can achieve, otherwise might start below your opponent's willing level. So sometimes your opponent will say, well, I really can't sell this thing for less than $25. Okay, now when you hear that, then you say, okay. You look at the situation, and we'll talk about situational awareness. You say, I think he can sell that for less than $25. So now you have a sense of where his floor is. It's probably 15. So if you don't want to set your thing, try to find where their bottom is. Okay, so you can get a guess of where you potentially could go. And then always give yourself room to maneuver. This is like, if you're ever in a schoolyard fight, if you're the 6'5" guy and the other guy's 5 feet, well, you don't need a lot of room to maneuver. If you're the 5 feet guy and the other guy's 6'5", you want some room to maneuver and very fast legs, right? The situation you're in depends on how you're going to get out of it, how you're going to be able to manipulate the facts and the circumstances. And you want to always have that out, or that way to get around things. So try to have the other party make the first offer. And it doesn't always have to be the first offer, but it has to be the first suggestion as to where the level is that the negotiation will be successful. Because they don't know what yours is, and then now you get some sense of where they are. So let's say something's a car, it's worth $5,000, okay? That we know as a fact it's worth $5. I don't know that, the dealers, let's just argue that God knows it's $5,000, okay? If you look at the car and say, well, will you take $6,000? Well, the dealer's going to say, oh, man, I don't know, $6,000, this is a really good car, I don't know if I can let it go for that. Are you willing to pay for maintenance? Well, $6,000, I was hoping not to pay for maintenance. Well, I'm not sure I could do that. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give you two. You'll pay for maintenance, except I'll give you the first 3 oil changes, all right? Well, okay. Well, now you just paid $1,000 too much, and you got to pay for maintenance. That's a stinky deal. If you go in and you say, well, I'll give you $2,000 for it. Well, then the dealer knows, there's no way I paid $4,000 for this car. I can't make that happen. But it sets his expectations. The dealer then knows, oh man, I got to work. I got to work to make this deal done, because this guy's frame of reference is it's only worth $2,000, right? If the dealer gives you a price, now obviously a car dealer, we know the old saying about car dealers, right? It's tough. They're known as swindlers, but you get a sense of where he's starting, where he's coming from. Now that can be a range, a wide range or a short range. If you're shopping at Nordstrom and you don't like the shoes, or you say the shoes are $89.95, and you say, will you give it to me for $60? They're going to look at you like with a blank stare, because they don't do that, right? But if you're traveling to Kenya, Africa, and you go into one of those stalls and you want to buy a bull's horn or something, or antelope horn, which I've done, and the guy at the counter says, oh, I need 60 rupees. Well, you got to chop that in a tenth right away, okay? Because they have a negotiating range like this. It's as wide as, you can't even fathom how wide their range is. They probably pay 10 cents for the thing. So it's always good to get their point and then look at the situation you're in and kind of decide, how real is this number? And then, if you're in the shop and he says, I want 60 rupees for the antelope, go, oh no, 60 rupees? Are you kidding me? I could probably find that on the street. I'm not doing this. You just do this, start doing while you're talking, a little walking away. You don't want to turn around and walk away like this, because then it doesn't send quite the right message. So you're talking as you start walking away, and then if the guy starts saying, oh, wait, then you know you got him, right? Then there's a lot of room in the negotiation. If the guy doesn't say that, then you got to keep walking. You can't stop. So then you go to the next dealer who has an antelope horn, and start from him. So the first guy said 60. He let you walk away. So it's probably, maybe it's 50 you could get it for. So the next dealer, now you have information. You've got data. So the next dealer, you say, well, I'll give you 30. And he goes, no, I want 60. Well, then you start walking away, well, 40. And then he goes, wait, come back. Well, then you know you got it for 50, right? So it's all about that situational awareness and the fluidity of doing the deal. So speak, and it's always good to speak first because it sets you up as the leader, all right? You don't want to make the first offer, but you want to say something like, well, I saw your car in the parking lot. I'm looking for another car. It's not quite the one I wanted, but it looks like it's pretty good. Okay, now you've set the expectations. It's not, you don't want him to think you're dying because it's a red Mustang and you've always wanted a red Mustang. Don't tell him that, right? You want to make some little story, but you want to show that you're interested, that you're there. And then, then you start the process. Let him make the first number. And then you can defer it. So if you get asked what they'll do, the car dealer will do, or art dealers for sure, they'll say, so if you don't like where it starts, then you say, okay, but before we get to the details, let's talk about the mileage on this thing, right? You just ignore what they said if you don't like their first offer, because that'll make them a little bit defensive, and they'll start thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's not really willing to deal yet. How do I make this work? And then immediately ask them after the answer above. So once they have this, then you want to ask them about, okay, what's your best offer? You want to go back to it and start the process going forward. So let's say they say 6,000 first, and you say, what's your best offer? The guy knows, the dealer will know that you're not going to take that, and he's going to have to start working with you to get it done. Always bargain a little. I mean, if you cut a deal and you don't bargain anything, okay, Nordstrom, you can't deal there. But if it's a situation where there's not a fixed price, don't ever pay what the price is. And if any of you decide to collect art when you're rich and famous entrepreneurs, never pay the first price on the wall, ever. So, because things like art get marked up 200-300%. The newer it is, contemporary, the higher the markup. The older it is, the less the markup. That's the general rule of thumb. So if you collect things from the 1600s, you're safer. If you collect from a contemporary piece from 2 months ago, it's going to be a 300 or 400% increase over the cost basis. So keep, you always want to bargain a little so that you don't get stuck. And if you don't bargain, the other side may feel that they're given away too much. So if somebody comes psychologically and there's not a little give and take, sometimes if it's something that's abstract and maybe they don't know something that you know, and they'll say, well, wait a minute, he paid full price for that. I wonder if I had the right price on that. And this happens a lot in art. There'll be a painting, it's very subjective, right? So sometimes they're all unique, most of them, and they'll have a price of 10,000. If somebody comes up and says, okay, I'll take it for 10. Well, the first thing the dealer's going to think is like, oh man, I underpriced it. It's probably worth 20 and I just didn't realize it, or there's something I don't understand, or maybe it's better than I thought. So I think having some discussion of a bargaining will help you out with that. So listen carefully again, the clues that we talked about. Know your subject matter. Don't be arrogant, but have perspective and confidence. Preparation is the whole key. And verbal skills. So this is where you got to learn how to think on your feet. Have any of you guys taken persuasive communication yet? Good. The rest of you who haven't, that's a class you should take. You got to sign up when you're a freshman to hopefully get it when you're a senior. It's like one of those classes. But all three of my Brown kids took it, and it was amazing. I had one who was the Olympic rower. He was kind of like a bumbly talker, like blah, 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 rambling sentences, nothing coherent. And then he took the class, and I actually could understand what he was saying. So, it's amazing at how it teaches you how to express yourself in a clear, concise manner and with fluidity, right? Negotiations always go better when you're just you flow right from one subject to the next, and there's no choppiness. Choppiness, that people will interpret that as nervousness or uncertainty or some other thing that they can take advantage of. So speak clearly and confidently, and it establishes your status. We're almost at the end. So be confident, not arrogant. We talked about the anchor effect. Okay, So the anchor is a little bit like the first price offer, but it's a little different. So the anchor is where, so you've got a range. The deal, best deal here, worst deal here, and you're going to try to get somewhere in here, right? The anchor is where the first kind of concrete discussion starts, right? Because that makes the range a little shorter by human nature, you know? And so it can be shorter on this end, your end, or it can be shorter on the dealer's end or the seller's end, right? So it's not like actually necessarily a price, but it's trying to set the framework for where you want the discussion, what the parameters of this discussion are. And you want to control that. You want to have that sense. So that's why I come in and I say about the red Mustang, well, I'm looking for a car, i.e. I want to buy something from you, but I wasn't really looking at that, you know, maybe thinking of a Prius or something. I.e., I don't really want a red Mustang, even though I really want a red Mustang, because I'm going to pretend like I want an energy efficient Prius. So I really don't need you. So you're kind of setting the stage of, you know, I'm a buyer, I got money, but you don't have exactly what I want. So what are you going to do for me? So you've already shifted that range a little bit towards your side, okay? And you haven't talked price at all. And then if by chance the other side sets the anchor, you know, this is the rarest painting by this artist I've ever seen. I've never come across one, you know, in my 25 years of dealing. That's a bad anchor, right? Because he's saying, pay up, okay? Pay up or you're not getting. It could all be BS, may not be true, but he's trying to set the stage for the anchor. And then if they do that, you just say something like, well, that's certainly not going to work. We're too far apart. You might do the walk away thing like with the guy who's selling you antelope horns. And to have a productive discussion, we got to start here. You know, I mean, I can't, you know, this is not, don't waste my time, it's not going to work. So now you're taking the anchor that the person tried to establish and you're moving it again towards your side. You just want to change that range as close to your side as you can. So this is really important. So the party that worries the least about losing a deal has the most leverage, right? If you don't really need to sell your house to the people who come, to the couple comes in and they're poo-pooing the plumbing and oh, this granite looks terrible and who put these old cabinets in the kitchen and, you know, but, you know, you've got plenty of money, you don't need to move, you'll move whenever you sell the house, you know, you've got a good position, right? If the house is empty and you've already bought another house and you're mortgaged to the hilt and you got 5 kids in college and that couple comes and says, oh, the cabinets aren't that nice, don't like the granite. Well, you got a lot, you know, you got potentially a lot to lose if they're a buyer. So that's a really important thing. So you got to kind of figure out beforehand, how much do I want this deal, okay, in the beginning, because that'll framework your discussions. Reduce items at risk. So have alternatives. So if there's another option to your deal, like the second dealer for the antelope horns, you know there's 50 dealers in this stall, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Africa. It's the coolest place to go buy stuff. You go to these markets and there's like, and they all yell at you, you know, when you're walking by because you look like a good mark for them. You're walking by, they all yell at you, and there's 100 of them or 60 of them. So you can buy and they all have antelope horns. I mean, there's a lot of antelopes in Africa, right? So it's a buyer's market. There's no seller. So you just say, I got lots of alternatives. So I'll just keep going from A, B, C until I get to a price I think is right. It's perfect. So you kind of set the stage for where you're going. You know your alternatives. You know what your options are. Perception is reality, right? So how you speak and how you dress and how you walk and do you look them in the eye, all those things, the person will make a very snap judgment about how easy you are going to be to negotiate with, right? And leverage is fluid. It doesn't stay the same. So don't worry about the past. Very big mistake. And I do this myself. If I bought a painting, you know, by a known artist, it's kind of a generic painting, and I paid $5,000 for it in 2006, my brain always is stuck on $5,000. Now, the artist may now be selling for $100,000, but if I go to buy another example by that artist, oh, God, I just, $100,000, I just don't want to pull it out of my wallet. It's just, I paid 5 in 2006 and now they want 100. I can't do it. That has nothing to do with it, what you paid for the old one, right? It's worth what it's worth today. So don't, and it's like stocks. I do this with stocks. I bought Apple at 15 bucks, literally 15 bucks a share. I won't buy it now at 130 bucks a share just because it's too expensive. But it's not too expensive, right? It's not. It's 130 bucks. That's what the company's worth. So you can't think about what you bought in the past and let that make a judgment for the future. So don't get stuck on that. Everybody has that problem. Everybody. Everybody in this audience has a problem. It's memory. It's institutional memory. You got to get out of that. How are we doing? Good. I think 2 more slides. Expanding interest. So you can actually change a negotiator by creating value for both sides, okay? So you got a pizza. I wolfed down 2 pieces. They were sort of warm. I can go over there now and it's cold, all right? So if Liz gets up and heats up the pizza, she just created value because I like warm pizza a lot better than cold pizza. I'm not implying anything, Liz. So, but that's something that's simple to do for both sides, and it's better for both sides. The seller, he's now selling warm pizza, and the buyer is getting something that's tasty, right? As opposed to cold. So there, you can change things. You can add things to a deal that make the deal better for both people. So don't split the pizza into thinner slices. You cook a bigger one, right? You get an extra large. So if it's not really that big a change, you can change whatever the product is you're selling to make it more advantageous for the buyer, the pizza buyer, than a smaller piece. So like, that's why I love buying pizza in New York, right? You go to Rhode Island, you buy pizza, you get a piece like, like that size, right? You go to New York in Grand Central Station, and they have these pieces that you got to like hold like this. They're like aircraft carriers. They cost twice as much. That's the only problem. But you get a lot. You feel like you get a lot of pizza value, right? And comparable interests. So you can add meat to this pizza. Maybe people like meat or like veggies or whatever. You can add something simple to it. So you can change the product by very simple, non-costly ways to make the deal better. And that goes with companies. That goes with buying computers. That goes with anything. I'd like a little extra RAM. What does a RAM chip cost? Well, if you go online, it says Apple says you got to pay $256 to get 8 megs instead of gigs instead of 4 gigs. But if you go online, you find out that it really costs 15 bucks. So if you're a smart seller, you charge them 30, and you offer it as you add 30 bucks to the deal. You say, I'm going to give you 8 megs. It doesn't cost a lot to get a lot of advantage. Okay. Need trade-offs for success. So you always want to bear gifts on little issues to you. People have different goals. In a negotiation, if let's say it's a barter transaction, you may have a piece of furniture and I have a car and we want to trade. Well, I may have no furniture in my house, so I want a piece of furniture, but I got a whole car collection. And the other guy can't get to work, he's riding a bicycle. The interests of those two parties are very different. So on a little thing, a thing that I don't care about, I'm willing to give you more of that stuff because it makes the deal sweeter for you, but I've got plenty of it. And then you don't want to give away on big issues, things that are important to you. You want to be able to extract those out of the other party to make it better for you. Bluffing, really good negotiators are good at bluffing. I'm good at bluffing. I mean, I got the art wheeler dealer thing down to a science. It's all about body movement and how you interact and where you start, but half of it's BS. It's not real. I want the thing desperately bad. So you gotta make sure that you set the stage, and a lot of this will come when you negotiate your first deal with it. Let's say you got a little startup and you want to do a deal with an investment bank to buy them out, or a strategic buyer comes to buy your little company. A lot of bluffing going on in that game, okay? Because they will come in, yep, we're this big, we got all this money, it's a little bit of that kind of, and you've got to be able to manage that expectation going forward. All right. So ask good questions. The other side gives you information. If you can afford time and the other party cannot, take your time, right? House transaction. If you cannot afford to wait, move the discussions along, but don't display impatience or pressure. So you can't afford the time, don't let them know that you can't afford the time. But don't waste it on your own end. It's amazing how many people love to talk, and they just keep talking, and they're wasting time if it's important to them. Move along the discussions, because that's your important commodity. Time can be a very valuable commodity in a transaction. Every bit as valuable as money or what the actual components of the transaction are. So here's a painting by Peter Klaas that our fund bought and sold. So these are the things, and I'm just going to use an object as an example, but you could replace this with anything: company, IP, patent, whatever you want to replace. It doesn't matter. So you have the setting. The settings can change. What if this painting is at the front cover of an auction catalog at Sotheby's versus it's in the back closet of a dealer in Paris hidden away, right? Those two settings are very different. If you're buying at Sotheby's, you have all this competition, it's all over the place, it's online, and it's very likely that people are going to figure out where it is, what it costs, what the range is. Versus if it's in a closet and the guy hasn't shown it for 2 years, maybe there's a lot more opportunity. So the setting at which you see this object determines your price to some degree. The relationship, I have a relationship with Sotheby's, but I don't have a nice, I'm just a buyer, I'm just a nobody, I'm just a checkbook. They don't care. Versus the dealer, I might know them, they're willing to show me the back room, see where it is, so that the context and your relationship of how you know the person or whoever you're dealing with will also change the argument. The object itself. Paintings can be signed or unsigned, dated or undated, cleaned or overcleaned or undercleaned. Been in the same family, provenance for 200 years, nobody knows where it came from. All those factors control price. This particular painting was signed and dated, 1649. Makes it more valuable and more predictable. So the object itself, even though it could be the same object, but there may just be something slightly different, can make a very big difference in the overall negotiation. And lastly, the price. In most negotiations, it always comes down to, come down to some dollar figure, right? And so that also getting that range set up correctly so that you get the right outcome is really important. And don't end up like this guy, unprepared, Make sure you prepare. So that's it from my perspective. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have or anything. Has anyone actually done a negotiation yet, like a real one? Yeah, for what was that?
I'm a graduate student, so I'm a little bit older. I was a negotiator for my company, so.
Well, you should be up here.
That's all good. So I did a lot. I traveled all over the country, and I was actually a negotiator in most people's eyes, on the wrong side. I went to people that wanted to cancel our financial services or things like that. And,
I've met you guys on the phone before.
And,
but wait!
I consider myself successful in it. I was the main one we were sent out because they knew when I was done, it flipped the other way. The people I was negotiating with felt that they were getting the better end of the bargain, even though they had no power originally.
Right. So I just had this yesterday with my power company. So you can use National Grid here, or you can get these resellers. And I'd signed up for a reseller a year ago, and they're very clever. So they give you a great rate, but it lasts for a year. And then if you don't sign up within a certain period, they give you the floating rate, which is twice what the electric company charges. Now, I'm a little busy. I don't always read all my mail, or my wife puts it in the circular file, one of the two. And so I did see this piece of paper and it said, ooh, that's like 5 days ago I was supposed to reply. So sometimes, you'll get kind of concrete examples. So I called them up and they said, well, Dr. Weiss, just because you're such a valuable customer, I'm not a valuable customer. I've been with one for a year. I'm a puny little retail consumer. And we like your business so much, BS. We're going to offer you the special rate of 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And I go, well, I just looked online and National Grid is 8.167 cents per kilowatt hour. So immediately silence, did I tell you about the extra special deal we have? Well, if you sign up for 18 months, which she didn't tell me about before, we'll give it to you for 8.06 cents an hour. You save 1.3%. And I said, ma'am, that's very generous of you, but do you think I really want to change to a company that sent me a letter doubling my rates to save 1.6%? What would you do? So I turned around. I said, what would you do in that situation? It's dead silence. Well, okay, I see your point. Look, I normally don't do this for people. I already knew what her deal was because I found it online. I normally don't do this for people, but if you sign up for the 6-month special plan, okay, you can't tell any of your friends or anything, you can get $6.59 per kilowatt hour. But you promise you can't tell anybody. Okay, I promise I won't tell anybody. I'll sign up for that rate. Hey everybody, you can get 6.5. I sent the email link to all my friends. You know, I mean, that happens daily. You know, and that's just. I mean, that's like I was talking to somebody like you. I think, well, you were probably more effective, more brains.
Well, I did want to throw out there 2 things. One thing that you didn't talk about, one of the most beneficial things in negotiation is silence. People aren't comfortable with it.
Yes,
You didn't
very
talk about that.
good point. So tell me what you think.
Well, people, if you stop talking, people will continue to get to you, and so even if you're on the wrong side of the negotiation.
So when do you do that? That's my question to you because I know when to do it. When do you stop talking?
It depends on the scenario.
That's right. And it's never at the beginning.
Yeah, no.
So silence is very effective. People want to fill a void, and I'll add that to this. That's a really good point. But you want to do it at a critical part of the negotiations. You want to get as far as you can when you think it's kind of not going anymore, but you want to extract a little more, and they say something, and you just kind of. Here's my cell phone. Yeah. And they'll say something. You know, they can't stand. People can't stand that void. So that's what's the other thing?
Just your advice on when you get 2 skilled negotiators on the 2 sides, how often you would recommend going against these rules, because when you have 2 going against each other, you have to get creative. What's your experience?
So how many times do you think 2 skilled negotiators actually go head to head?
It's actually more rare than you think, but
It's rarer than you think. It happens,
yeah.
especially at very high level negotiations. Obviously, lawyer B versus lawyer A, they both went to wherever, and they're really good at it. They've been doing it for 30 years. A lot of times those goes much quicker because they know all this stuff. They say, and they know each other. John, how do we get this deal done? And they don't do it in a negotiating way. They do it, John, how do we get this deal done? What do you need? What do I need? I'm going to tell you what. Now they don't always tell the truth, but they say, I need this. Can we get this? And it'll be done in an hour. That's not that common. Usually one side has an advantage because of knowledge. Not necessarily because of their negotiating skill, but one side knows more than the other side. And that can be a big advantage. But I agree, it does change the rules to some degree. Somebody else have a question? No? Well, great, thanks for those. I like the silence thing, that's really good. Good, well, I don't have anything else. Yeah?
Can you give us just one of your more recent deals that just comes to mind?
Yeah, so we just did a deal with this little company in Ireland. We designed a professor at Stanford and myself and a professor at Leuven, which is in Belgium. We designed a thumb joint replacement implant with 2 entrepreneurs from this thing called BioInnovate, which came out of Stanford, and a couple other universities have taken it up, and the University of Galway in Ireland is one of the BioInnovate incubators. And we had to raise $2.5 million for our round of negotiation. And so that's not a lot of money in the medical sphere, but it's very early stage, so it's high risk. So when we went to start talking to people who were angel investors or some really early stage VCs, venture capitalists, the thought was, well, what do they want to see and what do we want to tell them? So in that scenario, what they really want to know is this thing got a chance of going somewhere? That's the bottom line of somebody who wants to put in really early stage. Because 9 out of 10 deals fail. They want to make sure they have the 1 out of 10 deal that makes 100x, right? So the best way to do that is to make them comfortable with the technology. And so what we did when we went in to see these people, we already started. We said, look, we've got 3 of the most famous hand surgeons in the world, published a total of 800 peer-reviewed manuscripts. We have an NIH grant, the largest NIH grant, perfect score for thumb arthritis. And we've gone through 8 testing rounds We were very unhappy with the first few rounds, didn't work, modified it, came back, was kind of okay, weren't happy, went back, and now we're really happy. That was the perfect opening segue, because what they wanted to hear, you're already telling them what they want to hear without it. You're saying, we didn't like what we started with, so we're not trying to sell you something that's BS-y. You know, like a lot of people will come with a product that they've never tested, and they'll say, this is going to change the world, 10x, you know, you're going to make, but there's no substance. So we actually told them our process. We said, look, we went through, we didn't like it, we changed it again. It's taken us a year to get where we are, but we feel really comfortable. They know about the personnel involved. And so you already start setting that stage for that range. Now it wasn't a dollar range so much as it was a deal range, getting a yes, right? So there's no, and there's yes, and there's maybe. So we were pushing the range to the yes side by setting up the factors that make somebody comfortable that's in that space. For them, writing a check for, you know, let's say they write a check for $250,000 and they're multi-millionaires, that's not the important thing. It's not going to change their life. The important thing is they want it to succeed. So you feed them, the anchor effect is feeding them what they want to hear before you start. Now their frame of reference already, this may work. It's much easier to get some money from people if they say, this may work, than, oh, that's a cool idea, but I got no clue if this is going to go anywhere or not. All right, I've babbled too much. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attention. Good audience.